All right, well, it seems like we've tapered off in who's joining us, and hopefully we'll get a few more joining us over time. Thanks everybody for popping on with us today. We've got some great stuff to cover for Reimagine RTD, and this is of course our final meeting together. So we're happy to have an opportunity to connect and talk about, our focus today will really be on some of the deliverables that are coming out of the mobility plan for the future. So on our agenda today, we have just a few key items. First, of course, we're going to have a safety moment, as we always do. We're going to talk just very briefly about the system optimization plan. Then we'll dive right into the mobility plan for the future and some of these sub-bullets that you see here. And then a slide on the schedule and the next steps for Reimagine. So Brian, do you want to jump in on our safety moment?
Sure. Thank you, Holly. In the Western United States, and I'll include Colorado in that, we're approaching fire season, which is not the summer, but it's after the summer. So if you're out and about, don't start any fires. Don't start campfires, use your own stove. Don't drag any chains on your vehicles that are going to throw off sparks. So be careful out there, okay? We don't want any more wildfires. What we're going to do today is go over some work products that we wanted to give you a sense of where we're headed and some of the components that we believe to be of most interest in the mobility plan for the future. These are work products where we'll be seeking additional input. They're not finished. They're consultant recommendations at this stage, well, except for the SOP, which was adopted. So there may be future changes, but we wanted to give you the opportunity in your last meeting to take a look at these, share your thoughts on them, and ultimately we will incorporate as appropriate as we move forward to the board's consideration and discussion this October. So with that, I'll turn it back to Holly.
Fantastic. So for those of you who have been with us over these 3 years working together and through and into a pandemic, we have been working on that system optimization plan. So Doug, if you're out there, do you want to give us a little rundown on the result of that?
Sure. So over, I guess, almost the last 3 years, we've been working on the system optimization plan. We got over 1,600 comments from across the district, from constituents, from local municipalities, from elected officials, all over the district. And with that, we developed the final system optimization plan that went before the RTD Board of Directors on July 26th. That passed the board 14-1. And so at this point, it's a matter of implementation. The system optimization plan is dependent on RTD's resources as far as workforce goes, and any increases as part of that really are dependent on increasing our availability on operators and mechanics to be able to actually increase service. So going forward for the next few years, as part of our regular run board process, we'll be implementing aspects of the system optimization plan as those resources allow. So that's the direction that it's headed right now. Stay tuned for those 3 times a year service changes to see when things may be implemented.
Fantastic, thanks, Doug. And we do just want to give a big shout out and thank you for all your support and work and digging in, rolling up your sleeves and looking at those route by route recommendations and providing that critical feedback to enable that. Sometimes it's hard, of course, but that really allowed the process to result in something that could be adopted by the board. And I think we can all feel happy about its implementation and moving forward. So thank you all for that. So we're going to dive into the mobility plan for the future. And we want to start off with a review of the executive summary. Now, we sent this out in the email earlier this week, so hopefully you had a chance to take a quick peek at that. But we're going to give you just an overview of the contents that are starting to evolve in the executive summary. But then we really want to focus our time today with a review of the vision statements that we've pulled together. So we previously have been working with you all to identify those vision statements that talked about what is RTD's role. As we look out to 2050, what does RTD do in mobility in our region? So we took all of those, we came up with, RTD is an integrator, and they are supporting sustainable initiatives, and they are focusing on providing priority service to equity populations. We came up with a set of statements that you all reviewed and provided feedback on. And we have sort of put those all together in 4 statements that we're going to talk about today, and spend some time on making sure that these resonate with you, and that you feel like you, as the technical working group, can take these statements away and be an ambassador for them out in our communities, and be able to convey what we did as part of the mobility plan for the future. So if we move on to slide 7, let's just, we're not going to go through a bunch of words here. This was sent to you in your email, so please do review it and provide me feedback. But what we'd like to do here is just to review the contents, over an overarching view of the contents, and then dig into the vision statements. So this is the first step in the executive summary. We start off with an introduction that touches on why transit is important in our world, in our region, in our country. And then it moves into why about sort of the state of public transportation. Then the third paragraph talks about RTD and RTD's current state. Then we move into the right side here. We talk about the mobility plan for the future. And these are the 4 vision statements that we have developed that we're going to review today. So again, this is page 1 of the executive summary. Over here, we start to talk about what those the guiding principles that were adopted by the RTD board of directors and helped guide us through this process. Those are over here. Then this, you can see there's some placeholders here, but we provide some insights on RTD's mission and vision. And we provide some, why do we think this is important? Because we have a lot of growth coming in the region. And we know that there is, well, we had about 340,000 daily trips previously. Then we went into a pandemic and saw boardings and ridership drop quite a bit. But we know that with that growth in our population, that there's an awful lot of potential to capture transit riders. So we want to make sure that we're doing that. And this says 600,000 here in a day. And really, when we get to the big aspirational, it's actually closer to about 800,000 boardings that could be captured. But again, this is a draft, so we'll shore that up. Then down here on the bottom right on page 1 of the executive summary, we provide an overview of all the technical memoranda that have been developed through the process. So moving on to page 2, we move into that access vision that we'll dig into here in a minute. We have a blurb about why the access vision is important to RTD and to our region. We provide strategies that can be implemented by RTD under the current funding scenario. And then we provide strategies that can be implemented to improve access in the region if funding is increased. Then on the bottom left, you'll see that we have identified a metric to help us measure how well we're doing with achieving that access vision. And what you'll see here is that we have in all 4 cases of these vision statements, we've chosen just a couple of really key metrics that we think are important. There's a lot of ways we could measure these metrics, measure our success here, but we tried to pick 1 or 2 key that we felt would help with the messaging for determining the vision statement, how well we're achieving the vision statement. Then on the top right sheet, we also felt that it was pretty important that we tie the mobility plan for the future and the recommendations that are being made there to the recent RTD strategic plan. RTD, this is a nearer term plan that RTD has put in place, but they're making great headway on getting it implemented. So we felt it was important to talk about how we are supporting that with the recommendations made in Reimagine RTD.
Who's here besides me?
Oh, hello? I hear someone. No, maybe not. Okay. Do we want to move on to the next vision? You'll see that on the next slide, we have the equity vision. So we'll talk a little bit about that statement as well, but same structure that goes through what that vision statement is, why is it important, the strategies that RTD can undertake to achieve that vision, metrics for evaluating how well they've achieved it, and then again, over on the right side, how it addresses the strategic plan priorities. And then we also have personas on the right that start to talk about how this vision statement better supports people who are using RTD's customers, people who are using the service, maybe people who are not using the service today, but would be inclined to use it with the changes that we're making. The third slide here, or slide 11 or 10, I believe it is the sustainability vision. So we heard loud and clear from several people in this group and in the advisory committee that really addressing how RTD is supporting sustainability and those greenhouse gas emissions reductions was important. So we've started to outline what that might look like in this sustainability vision. Again, why it's important, strategies, opportunities, and then the metric on the bottom. And then finally, the fourth slide, or the fourth page of the executive summary, talks about the financial vision. And really, the financial vision is really what we talked about the last time we were together, that there is not enough money currently coming into RTD and in its current funding sources to meet some of the needs and desires of the region and some of those goals that the region has set for greenhouse gas emissions, things like transitioning to electric vehicles or zero emission fleet. And so this is really documenting some opportunities for trying to improve RTD's funding, future funding, and what that looks like. And then, of course, there's some metrics here at the bottom as well. So I want to spend some time, this next bit of time, and Julie's going to help us work through this sort of discussion and questions on these vision statements, because I think these vision statements are, while over time RTD may adjust some of this very specific strategies that are included, we'd like to see that this vision of what we're trying to achieve stays the same, and that this really resonates with this group, and that we are moving forward in this direction. And then as local agencies and RTD, that we're all pointed in the same direction of what we're trying to achieve here. So let's just go over each of these vision statements so we're all on the same page. And then Julie, if you want to take it away and help us like work through that, that would be great. So the first is the access vision. And what we've identified here is that RTD is a mobility integrator that provides high quality, high capacity regional transit backbone and partners with local agencies to support community-based services. The next one is the equity vision, that RTD is a mobility provider that maximizes access to opportunity by prioritizing service to those who need it most. The third is the sustainability vision, mobility leader that defines and evolves transit's role in environmental sustainability through innovation and collaboration. And a financial vision, which is that RTD is a mobility agency that is well-funded, financially stable, and serves as a good steward of taxpayer dollars while supporting regional access, equity, and sustainability. So you can see that that financial vision really tries to encapsulate all three of those other vision statements.
So what do you think? You guys hopefully had a chance to take a peek at this. We sent it out, a few days ago. Really, the main things we want to know, are we missing anything? You guys have been fantastic. You have stayed with us through this multi-year process. You've given us a lot of feedback between these vision statements and the strategies, and we can go back and look at some of those. We really tried to capture, capture the feedback and the discussions that we've had. So I guess the first question I would throw out to there, are we missing anything? Is there anything that you would really feel like needs to be included in these vision statements that really needs to be a priority of this exercise that didn't bubble up, from what we've presented to you? Any thoughts on that? Anything we might be missing? quiet group today. I know it's our last meeting. Come on, you got to talk in our last meeting. So while you're pondering that, are we missing anything? Obviously we're interested, are you supporting this? We're also interested in, have we articulated in a manner that you can help us convey? To Holly's point, you've been down this long road with us, and we want to make sure that as we're presenting these results, that we'd love your help in getting the word out about well, what was the mobility plan for the future? Well, it identified these clear vision statements and strategies. Do you feel comfortable? Is there anything else we could be providing you along these lines? Or is there anything you just don't agree with? We just love to hear any feedback you guys would be interested in sharing. Deborah, thank you. Thank you for jumping in.
Sure, there I am. So I think that these generally capture what needs to be captured, and I think they're articulated well. The one thing that I might not see here, which might be covered in other parts of RTD, or maybe it's not a key issue, is nimbleness and flexibility. Especially the way RTD operates traditionally with the 3 run board changes, it's hard to pivot. So I'm just putting that out there as if there was something missing, that's what I see. And Julia, I was going to ask if you go back and look at the slide that has the access vision on it in more detail. Thank you. So I was reading the strategies underneath the access vision, and this is the first time I've seen the bullet to dedicate under strategies, dedicate a minimum of 1% of annual operating budget to fund an enhanced partnership program and allocate to sub-regional service sectors on a per capita basis. I think that's a really important strategy.
I need to jump in here. So actually that we talked about sub-regionals by sub-regional service sectors, and that is actually in this draft that should be taken off, but there is the dedicate the minimum of 1% annual operating budget to fund enhanced partnership program. And then I believe, and Brian, help me out here. I believe where it landed was that no particular sub-region, I think it was like a 30% cap. Is that right?
Yeah, that's another approach that that's currently under consideration.
Yeah, so how is allocated? We had put in here a possibility of allocating on a per capita basis. RTD thought it could be more flexible if they did not do it that way, and they allowed for it open generally to all service sectors, but then suggesting that no one service sector could have potentially more than 30%. So that is likely to be updated. So that's a good flag.
So Holly, what I was going to say on that point is that it was the first time that I heard that talked about. And I think it's good that there's a specific bullet that talks about the partnerships. And I think it's good that there is a concept of how much money, how much of the operating budget would go to it. I am curious if anyone knows on the RTD or consulting team what 1% of the annual budget amounts to.
Brian, help me out, but it'd be millions in the somewhere 8 million-ish category, but help me out, Brian. Is that about right?
That's correct. So depending upon what you include in that calculation, Deborah, you're talking in the range of $7+ million per year.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to simulate some conversation around that. I don't have anything else.
That is very helpful. Did you have, when you read that and saw it as the sub-regional service sectors, or that conversation that we had in follow-up of the no service sector more than 30%? I mean, nothing is set in stone. This is obviously draft, and we're trying to figure out what makes the most sense for the region. Any thoughts one way or another on that?
That's a big hole to step in, as you've discovered already.
Yeah.
I don't have a negative reaction to per capita basis, but I'm sure that the sub-regional areas would say, hey, we all get an equal amount or a fair amount. We're learning that equity doesn't mean equal, so it's a tough call on that.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of ways to sort of to look at it and slice it up.
Thank you, Deborah, for
Sure.
jumping on that. Other thoughts on the partnership program? We've got a lot more information to go into toward the end of the presentation on that. But to Deborah's point, this was kind of a new concept. Love other people's perspectives on it. What are you thinking? Do you like this idea of allocating a specific percentage? How would you allocate it? Any thoughts on that? Phil, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Great work. It looks really wonderful. Thanks for doing all this and prepping it all for us. Hopefully my internet won't crash like my last meeting, so I'll be able to talk this one all the way through. But this looks good. I think it gets to the point that we're trying to make early in the process about let's try to divide this up a little bit and have RTD be more of the regional service provider and have the locals take on more of that local and community access piece to it. But I do like to see that there's dollars allocated to help with that process, because it can't just be done. The partnership is not just the community, not just the locals, right? It is the partnership that has to happen. It'd be interesting to see what is spent locally or spent currently on local service to get a comparison. If it's more than 1%, which I assume it might be, well, I definitely think it is. Be interesting to know that breakdown and see really what. I think you're gonna get lots of questions when you start putting in exact numbers like that of how does that compare with what's being spent today on what we consider community services or community-based services. The other piece is in the financial vision, it just kind of talks about regional, doesn't talk about local at all or community-based at all, which I think the financial vision needs to maybe, well, I shouldn't say it all because I haven't read the whole document piece, but in the statement, the vision statement anyway, it seems to be missing from that statement. So that's the only thing I would mention is seems to be supporting regional access, equity, and sustainability. I'm almost thinking it should say just supporting access, equity, and sustainability, so that we understand that you really are a partnership with us. But I also get where RTD is coming from on that, so I can kind of see it both ways. But just some comments. Thank you.
Oh, terrific. Thank you. That was very helpful. Other thoughts on any of the vision statements? David, thanks for joining us.
Sure, thanks. David Kretzinger, City of Denver. I like that the statements have bullet points both for what we're able to do with current funding and what we're able to do to reach into with increased funding. I think that's good. So to Phil's and Deborah's comment, we start out with the 1% for that regional partnership program, and we can maybe grow into that if the money grows. I think that BRT opportunities are also good things for the region as a whole for a lot of reasons, but I guess most that if we can decrease the delay that RTD buses experience, you get a higher quality service for the same or very slightly less operating dollars. So we're not spending a ton of money in the operating world to bring frequencies up. We just plow the time savings back into the same dollars and you get more frequency out of it. So I think that helps the region as a whole to deliver more service across the region.
Mm-hmm. Terrific. Thank you. Appreciate your feedback. Other thoughts? Is there anybody out there that's like, you know what, I can't support this. I think you're all completely off track. And I think you've missed the boat. Is there anybody that feels strongly that we're missing something or that we didn't address something that you felt very passionate about? Any naysayers out there? We want to hear from you. Yulang.
Julie, can I make a comment as a public comment?
Yulang, let's let Yulang go first. And then who was that? Is that Richard?
Yes, Richard.
Okay, yeah, you can go after Yulang. How about that?
Okay.
Thank you, Julie. Just a quick question. Looks like when we talk about this access vision, we're talking about the RTD will focus on the regional backbone service, and then there will be a partnership formed with locals, cities and counties, sub-areas, sub-regions to cover the local service. Is there a very specific, like, because right now we have SOP and that covers the entire region. Does that mean that a portion of the services provided by the SOP will be covered by the partnership?
Holly, do you have thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I would envision that this would evolve over time, and there could be projects that there already are projects, lots of a number of different services that are already covered through their current partnership program. I would assume those would continue in the partnership program, and that partnership program would grow as our needs in the region grow.
So it's not, it's a process.
Yeah.
It's not a starting point that all goes away and has to be covered by the partners.
No, no. I mean, these vision statements are really looking out to, I say 2050, but the point is that they're out in the future. That it's not so much that they're exacting 2050, but they're out in the future, and they're more where you're pointed. So as RTD makes decisions about where they spend their limited resources, they're always putting it through this lens of, is it meeting this regional backbone? Am I trying to get more service on the ground? Am I partnering with the local agency to meet the local needs that way, rather than spending the money on the local needs separately? I'm really partnering to accomplish that. So I think it's more a lens that they're looking through than it is a exacting process to start, at some time.
Yeah, maybe some discussions in terms of the transitions. I know this is 20 years or 30 years down the road, but it
is starting, once you put it in place, you're starting to work towards it now. It's not a light switch.
Exactly. It's a process, and you're setting the directions, and we'll go along that direction. So maybe some discussions to talk about the relationship between the current SOP and this mobility plan for the future. What are the things, like a transition plan or in step-by-step implementation or something?
Yeah,
so we have a better understanding of this.
Yeah, there's definitely not going to be a step-by-step process, because it's more of a philosophy of how you engage and put service on the ground than it is step-by-step. Then the service planners will identify that as they move forward, and you'll see more about the partnership program, which does have more of a step-by-step.
Yeah, maybe it's not a SOP.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying it's not a step-by-step. It's maybe not a clear description. It's more like a framework of how this will transition from what we have today. Your RTD is implementing this SOP over time, then how this SOP will be eventually.
So the SOP started to do these very things for us. It's the start of this process.
Well, I thought, SOP has been adopted. So you have to implement the adopted SOP, then the SOP will be transitioned into this mobility plan for the future.
The SOP, I would say, is the first step of the mobility plan for the future. It takes into account trying to start to point RTD towards being the provider of the backbone, working within the amount of money and labor force that you have to meet that financial vision. It's trying to capture more riders on the services to get to that sustainability vision. And it focused some really good service and higher quality service on the equity populations. So it's really the first step to meeting some of these. It doesn't meet them all, but it is a first step to meeting some of these statements.
Okay, those are good discussions. Maybe that's something should be included in your documentation, so people can understand better between this SOP and the mobility for plan for the future.
Yeah, I mean, we took information from you all through that whole process and wove it into both pieces of the plan. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, you had a thought for us? And then we'll go to Mike.
Yes, thanks. So I kind of wanted to build on that same theme. You know, I'm talking to conveying the key messages to your spouse and neighbour. You explain to people that RTD is funded. You know, fares are a very small part. The sales tax funds a large amount of RTD's operating budget. The reason we do that is, you know, bus services, and especially local ones, are fundamentally unprofitable. We provide them as a community service. It's a public service. If RTD is going to talk about becoming much more regional and sort of sourcing out local service, perhaps something should be put in to explain how the sales tax position might change, because I would imagine, playing devil's advocate, for the argument would be, if RTD is not going to run these local services, surely they don't deserve the current sales tax funding. So it's just to explain that.
No, I appreciate that feedback. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Great. Mike.
So I know I feel like Julie has me in mind when she says, hey, if there are any naysayers, you ought to.
I was definitely thinking of you, Mike. Good. We want to hear.
So if you wouldn't mind a little bit of an analogy. So I was on a task force for a local government here in the region as they were doing their parks plan. And the parks plan said, you know, grass will grow and people will enjoy and things will be equitable and life will be good in the parks. And then if you look in the park, there are people injecting heroin in the park. There are people trying to live in the park. There are serious hygiene problems in the park. And none of that got said. We were just going to create this vision of the lovely park we were going to have someday. And so part of what I would have wished, though I don't expect you all to start over and do this on my behalf, is a more problem focused, hey, this is the difficulty we have. Here's how we're going to tackle the problem we are facing. And so to talk about the rising maintenance and operating costs of rail service, and to talk about the fiscal realities of the current sales tax and the current, fare box, and with the drop in ridership, if the pandemic, here's the loss of revenue, and here's the mismatch between revenue and expenses, and here's our vision, not of how we will all live in nirvana. Mm-hmm. Everybody's riding trains and we're all in partnerships and buying stuff from RTD, but here's how we're going to solve this really difficult problem we are facing. And so, this local jurisdiction has a lovely plan that is sitting on a shelf about the parks we're all going to live in someday, but there's nothing in the plan that says, this is how we're going to clean them up. And this is how we're going to prevent people from, using them as, shower facilities or whatever. And so there's nothing to go on to solve the problem that they have. They just have this vision, which again, sits on a shelf. So I would have wished for this is the hard thing we have. This is the gap between how much money we have and how much we're going to need. And this is our vision for fixing what is broken or what is going to be broken. And so, yes, this is all lovely and great and equity and goodness and, rose petals. But what's missing is how the hell are you going to solve the problem?
So Mike, do you feel like, and I think when you get a chance, I'd love to hear your feedback on like the introduction we did of the executive summary. We did try to hit on kind of some of the hard points in there. And I think some of your points you make are great. We can shore it up with that. When you say, and we're, there are some, let's just use the financial, because that is a really hard space to be in. There's not enough money to do what anybody wants. There's not enough money to finish fast tracks. There's not enough money to add growth. There's not enough money to address the greenhouse gas in the manner that the region would like us to. We've had those discussions, right? So we have tried to, and as Hugh Lang is asking about, what does this really mean to be the backbone? What does this really mean? So are you looking for more definitive? You want a map that shows what the backbone is? Is that what you're, as opposed to like saying that this is the sort of concept for fixing that problem? Or tell me more what you have in mind.
Well, I worry that the solutions are draconian enough that the map isn't what's missing. What's missing is if we can't afford to provide the service at the level we are providing it now,
Yes,
and voters say no to us when we go to ask them next, because they will say no at least once,
yes,
because you have to try these things more than once, often. So to live in the real world, if the voters say no, and we are faced with the gap between where we are and where we want to be, we're gonna ask some edges of the district to withdraw from the district because we can't serve them. Or, I mean, I'm talking about, you know, what's really going to happen if the rubber can't meet the road, and and these things are unrealistic to imagine in the near term. Yes, lovely in the long term. I want to live in the long term where everything is all nice and good, and but
no, I absolutely
choices,
appreciate that.
and this doesn't help RTD make them. If it
So I appreciate that. I think maybe there's some shoring up, because I actually think those answers are right in here, but maybe the wording needs shored up, because what really happens is that you cannot transition to the electrified or zero emission fleet that you want to. You cannot, like when we're talking about how much is provided in local service at today versus the future, and that 1%, there is even less that's provided by RTD. That's what actually happens, even less. And RTD focuses solely on that backbone, and you got to figure out how to get yourself to that backbone if you don't have additional money coming into RTD, because there's not enough money to go around. So it is trying to get to those. So perhaps the messaging though isn't on point enough to convey that, we're not conveying it on point enough to you.
Yeah, so I think, you know, the example that in the West Corridor that I fear we will have to use not as just a hypothetical example, but might actually have to happen is RTD can't really help Southern Jefferson County. And so the message to Jefferson County will be de-annex from RTD, do your own funding, come to us with partnership, and we can restore something in Southern Jefferson County, but it'll be a Jefferson County product. And RTD will be able to help, but you're going to have to stand it up.
Now, you're right on the edge of cusp of my making sure that I understand, but I will tell you, I think I don't think that we did an evaluation of de-annexing, like taking people out or bringing more people in. And if you take them out, you're not getting their sales tax. So I'm just going to tell you right now that was not a recommendation that we made here. Now, whether they're getting the service they want or not is a different story. But if they go out of the district, RTD, I believe, is not going to be able to partner with them because RTD cannot provide service. Somebody in RTD help me out here. RTD cannot provide service outside of their district. I believe that they are limited by that. So if they move themselves out, they won't be able to get this partnership program. So that's a little balancing act there.
Yeah. So the example was intended as only that. Like if you lose, if you lose the confidence of Southern Jefferson County, which I think is happening, and they de-annex or revolt or do whatever it is that they do, well, then how do they get into the backbone serve? How do they get to the end of the W or the end of the G?
Yeah.
And so I just don't know that this has enough of the gloom and doom in it to say when the hard choices have to be made, here's how we can get from where we are, which isn't where anybody wants to be today, to this future we hope to live in. And it ain't easy. It's going to cost X and Y and
and as you know, we have all of that information on the costs and the deficit and all that we've reviewed at the previous meeting.
Yeah. So I would have liked a little more rain on the parade. So
no, it's not. I mean, it is. I'm going to tell you, when you get a chance to read that introduction, you will see that it is more parade raining, I think, than you're expecting. It is not a all roses and come to the park. It's a little come to the park and pick up trash, maybe.
There you go. Get an umbrella.
Get an umbrella, right.
Cool.
Thank you, Mike. We really appreciate that. Holly, we had a couple of interesting comments in the chat. Phil had, an interesting idea. Maybe we should take, since we've got 4 statements, maybe we should have a vision statement that sort of sits on top of these that
Right.
consolidates them all. I thought that was a really good idea.
I like that.
And then we had an interesting comment from John. You may have some thoughts on this. You know, the workforce. We talk workforce, and yet this doesn't really seem to really focus on it too much.
Yeah,
If you
okay,
wanna
so
talk
we do
about
have,
that.
yeah, we do have a couple items for that. The SOP was developed hand in hand with the Service Development Group, which is, you know, they're the folks that are putting the services out on the road and have the best handle on how much service is actually available and what workforce actually is available. So it was developed with them, and the workforce continues to be, you know, a challenge for sure. We also put together through peer reviews and research, there's a workforce challenges memo that was put together as part of this, of Reimagine and the mobility plan for the future, that was developed with RTD to make recommendations for trying to shore up some of those workforce issues. And RTD is taking active action, as you know, with the new collective bargaining agreement. They have, there was a period of time where they were providing signing bonuses. I'm not sure if they still are, but actively trying to work on that. So there's definitely a lot of activity around trying to shore up that workforce issue. But as you all are probably aware, it's not at all limited to RTD. This is, you know, across the country, agencies are facing this issue. So it's a big issue to tackle.
So if they go online to the mobility plan for the future, the online tool that we sent out the link for, there's a whole workforce piece, didn't it have with the memo and everything?
I believe I believe that the draft is out and posted out on the mobility plan for the future. Yes.
Yeah. And Brandon said we do have signing bonuses for certain positions. Sorry.
Okay.
They'll do
Yes.
that.
Thank you.
Brandon.
Thank you for that. I'm always a little afraid that I might be speaking incorrect information.
Well, we've got a few more minutes and then we're going to jump into a couple of other topics. Any other thoughts on these? This has been some great feedback and things for us to think about. Any other thoughts on any of the individual vision statements, or we could get back into any of the strategies, any questions you guys might have?
Hi, it's George Holcomb from Denver Airport. I would just like to add on Deborah's, I think, comment about nimbleness and being agile and such. I mean, I see you have innovation here mentioned in sustainability, but I think innovation should be throughout the whole, you know, every vision element in my mind. And, you know, that should probably cover, you know, things that can alleviate certain problems in different ways. For example, if you know, introduce driverless vehicles, right? We know that there are some light rail solutions that are working in other places without drivers, right? And technologies there that can actually solve part of your, you know, driver shortage problem, for example, right? And then also, when you look at the access mobility integrator, right? I think you probably meant to go beyond just, you know, providing the backbone and partnering with local agencies, right? Because you want to partner with others to create that integrated, you know,
Yes.
system, right? So
Yeah.
that should probably somehow be more spelled out.
Yeah, that's good. It's really not just local agencies, because it's it could be app providers, it could developers, it could be other.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, it could be, you know, I know it can be tricky, but, you know, private partners as well. And finding some ways to, you know, meet both the, you know, RTDs and the private partners goals, right?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great call.
Great. Thank you, George. That was wonderful. Any last statements before we move into the next section? And this is not you, this is our last meeting, so we're going to miss you guys, but you can still reach out to us. If you have any ideas after the call, reach out to any of us. We'd still definitely love to hear it. So. All right, well, with that, I think we will jump into just a big thank you. Thank you. Just in case we didn't say that enough. We know this was a long process. We know this was a lot of time. Just really wanted to just stop for a minute and tell you how much we appreciate all of you and appreciate all your efforts on this. So really do appreciate that. Battery electric buses.
All right. So we have, over the course of our meetings, we've brought some detailed information about battery electric bus and the assessment that was being done as part of the Reimagine process. But we have some updated information for you today, and Katie's going to give us an overview of that.
Thanks, Holly. So hello, everybody. Katie Dawson, part of the team here at FHU. And I did want to mention that Cliff Hankey from WSP, him and his team have been behind the scenes working for months and months and months. So he is with us today as well to provide some comments and input. But my goal is to really, like Holly said, we've had, updates and some information at the meetings in the past about the financial or about the modeling that was done for the zero emission vehicles and some of the real nitty gritty about that, and wanted to just kind of bring high level overview back to you all. So in terms of kind of the goals of the assessment, as we started this project, it really was what would it take to transition to battery electric bus for RTD? Which is a big question, and it's a big question to be answered. That took a lot of work, like I mentioned. But there's kind of these three components: the fleet needs, what does it actually take to transition those 1,000+ buses to battery electric? What does it mean in terms of the facilities? What is the needs in terms of space, in terms of upgrades related to the utilities? And then overall, kind of what do those costs look like, and what would that potentially mean? And as Holly mentioned, there's a lot of trade-offs, right? Like if you want to go this direction, it's really expensive, and focusing on backbone. So really just trying to provide some concept of understanding in terms of what this would mean for RTD. The other thing I wanted to mention kind of on this first phase is kind of what we're calling it. But last year, with the FTA is now calling for zero emission vehicle plans with applications for funding for vehicles through the 5339 programs, both the bus and bus facilities and the low and no. So I think kind of the potential, or the point of this is the foundational level of that. That is not going to provide that, but it really kind of sets the stage for where RTD can go to really meet those expectations of FTA for that comprehensive zero emission vehicle plan. So jumping in, did want to talk a little bit about RTD's battery electric bus experience. That yes, there's a lot more vehicles across the country that are in operation now that are low or no emission, but RTD was really at the forefront of implementing battery electric buses on the 16th Street Mall. On the mall ride shuttle, 36 vehicles at the time was really quite a big number for implementing those, and was at the time the largest battery electric bus fleet in the US at the time. They do their charging at the Platt maintenance facilities, 30 plug-in chargers. And I think kind of the point of this is that this isn't new to RTD, but really looking at it expansively across the whole system is a different consideration. But there are a lot of opportunities to build on what has been learned, what has been done with the mall. And then subsequently, RTD did receive funding both from FTA and Volkswagen Settlement to purchase some additional battery electric buses that are on order right now. There will be 17 of those that will operate on fixed routes. And I think this is really a great opportunity, and we'll talk about it next steps, but for RTD to utilize these 17 buses to start looking at what does this really mean in the operating environment out on the fixed routes across the region. What are the opportunities to test that technology, see what things really do in real world experience. And then also they're going to be working here at the end of the year on that charging equipment and infrastructure installation and those upgrades. So really kind of a good opportunity to do a little pilot testing here to understand what this might look like for RTD at a larger scale, should they choose to go down that path. So kind of coming back to the foundation, in terms of the overarching, what we did, what our teammates at WSP really focused on as they were going through this. And there's kind of these three key things. One was the modeling. So the service data, understanding what the routes are operating today, how they're getting out of the system, how they are, what locations are they operating out of, what bus barns, and then also, topography and different elevation gain things. So really trying to understand how is the service operating today that can go into this model. In terms of the operating parameters, really kind of considering what the assumptions are for your battery electric. So the information on the vehicles, the charging, as well as the batteries and the power and capacity. As a result of that, there was, they completed the analysis and there was a lot of the output, and for the purpose of just kind of this high level analysis to get started, looked at, if you just replaced your vehicle and you put that service that was out there, and the analysis was done on 2021 service, what does that look like? How many buses can complete their blocks? How many cannot? And of course, there's opportunities to bridge that gap, right? So it's never going to be that you do this run and, this was really kind of you flipped a switch and what would happen, and what kind of challenges would there be? So really providing some input, and then we'll talk about scenarios where we talk about, on route charging and some other things that can really, like I said, bridge that gap, whether it's looking at your service planning where you can, make sure those buses can make their routes or the blocks, and other things. In terms of the facility analysis, there are 7 facilities across the metro area, and a really important consideration, there are RTD owned facilities and there are contractor owned facilities. So as a part of this analysis and kind of our scope of work was, what would you have to do at all of these facilities? Understanding, and really important, here note, is the contractor owned facilities, RTD can't go out and say, yes, you have to do this. I mean, there are potential, but they really only have control over the facilities that they own and operate today. So while we looked at all the different facilities, there are also things that need to be considered about, again, this being the first phase of analysis of what the realities would be in terms of what that looked like. And then ultimately really coming up with the cost estimates to inform kind of this order of magnitude. What does it mean in terms of this transition? So next slide, please, Julie. So in terms of scenario development, this is really kind of to understand what's that differential between if we just continued on as we are today, that we did not add any additional battery electric buses to the fleet, everything was replaced with diesel. What would that look like? So there's a couple of different scenarios that the team went through to come up with kind of these really high level facility and vehicle transition costs. So the first scenario was if you replaced all of the diesel vehicles when they came up for their useful life. And again, I mentioned it's, 1,000+ vehicles that would be replaced. What would that mean if you did it as hydrogen fuel cell vehicles? And then the 2A and 2B, and this is important concept in that, the reality that you'd probably never go do a 1-for-1 replacement, because there's going to be opportunities to adjust your service, to do charge management. As technology improves, those vehicles may be able to go on a longer range. But for scenarios 2A and 2B, we wanted to look at some of that optimization. So the first being, you replace all your diesel vehicles with battery electric buses, but there is no on-route charging. So you're really not optimizing any of those blocks and making sure that the buses can go farther while they're out without coming back to the bases. The scenario 2B is you'd replace all the diesel vehicles with battery electric buses, but you would strategically, and the team went through to identify what some of those on-route charging opportunities would be to optimize the deployment of the service. So these were kind of the scenarios, like I said, to give this order of magnitude. What do you do for a baseline? What does it mean in terms of these other, transitioning to the battery electric bus? Next slide. Okay. So as I mentioned, to kind of go through this, looking at this assessment, there's a lot of assumptions that have to go into things in terms of your vehicle costs. What does it look like? What are the cost differentials across those? So this just kind of gives a little bit of a baseline of, you know, if you're replacing 30, 40, 45, 60-foot buses, you know, what does that mean in terms of diesel? And then if you were doing battery electric or fuel cell electric buses, what does that mean as well? So obviously the red are the diesel and they're much lower. I think the pretty clear indicator that it is a lot more expensive in terms of transitioning those vehicles over. So just a little baseline information here. And then the next slide talks about the total vehicle and infrastructure upgrade costs. So this is what would you have to do to all of the depots. So, and this considers all 7 of them, both the RTD and the contractor owned. But what kind of order of magnitude are we talking about in terms of cost? And when you look at this, it's pretty significant. You know, you can assume that just on those vehicle costs alone that we saw in the previous slide. But the baseline here being, you know, you wouldn't have any additional cost over what you would plan to do with that diesel replacement schedule. Scenario 1 is over 3 times the cost of what it would be to do the baseline. And then scenario 2 and 3, as you can see, they're pretty close order in terms of relativity, 2.4 and 2.5. So getting that on-route charging doesn't have a huge impact on the order of magnitude of the budget, but definitely does have an impact. But, you know, that small cost investment does help return that you can deliver the service and you know, make those blocks meet their service runs. The thing that I did want to note here is with the on-route charging, the way that the costs were assessed here to kind of go in this high-level analysis was, you know, what the actual facility costs would be, but this does not include any of the land acquisition or utility. So there would be additional costs and needs above that with the on-route charging scenario. In the next slide, the kind of looking at, okay, so what does this mean? And I think all along kind of it's been kind of the mission of this part of the project of what would it take? What would it mean if RTD wanted to go down this path? So in terms of kind of next steps, what does this all mean? The so what? I think, you know, RTD has this really great opportunity to build on lessons learned from the mall ride and also to implement some real world testing. You know, really looking at what the model said and what the actual outputs are when they get these 17 new buses that they can deploy on fixed routes and really understand in their other operating environments what happens. And overall, it is, again, as Holly was talking about the vision and the trade-offs, is what's the interest in moving towards fleet electrification, or is there a need for other alternative fuels? I know that's come up throughout this process with the partners and at RTD. You know, is there another alternative fuel that needs to be looked at? This one specifically was to look at that battery electric bus. So definitely kind of what does the next step look like in that regard? The other thing, and I mentioned this at the beginning, is what is, you know, what are the additional phases of ZEV planning that need to occur for RTD to be compliant with the new ZEV transition plans per the FTA for funding? And, you know, what does it really mean in terms of a full rollout plan? What would be the detailed, and Cliff is on here, and if you guys have questions, we can talk through that. But, you know, there's a lot more that has to go into this to really have that real comprehensive plan. Funding and grant opportunities is another big component of this, given the IIJA funding and how much money is coming out for low and no. What are the opportunities there? How does that play into decision making, and what additional analysis or what direction RTD wants to go in? At the state level too, with the Clean Transit Enterprise, additional funding opportunities available. So there's a lot of money coming down towards, and it's a lot of focus on electrification. And, you know, again, is it the right answer, the wrong answer, a fine answer? I think that's part of the what direction and kind of trade-offs in terms of RTD's next steps. And then I think you really can't underestimate the evolution of technology, right? We're at a point in time that we did this analysis and, you know, looked at the 2021 this doesn't integrate even, like what happens if you implement the full SOP, and what happens is range expands and you have new technologies, and what does that mean in terms of your transition. So there's a lot of key factors here, and I think we all wish we had the crystal ball, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for this to serve as a foundation for RTD, and really, like I said, have those conversations about, the order of magnitude and the costs and what would be needed from a facility and fleet perspective to potentially go down this path. So that was a really high level, quick discussion. There is so much data and detail and work that has gone into this, but happy to answer any questions and go from there.
Thoughts, questions? Hulang, jump in.
Yes, thank you. Can you go back to that slide with the cost, the total cost? Yeah, you said the other one, sorry, the one you just, okay, this one, yes. So you said the 3.2, 2.4, 2.5, those are on top of the baseline, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the baseline is 0, what does that mean? This is capital number 1, right? This is capital cost.
This is vehicle and facilities.
Yeah, so it's the purchase, the capital cost, not the annual operating cost. So what does that mean? 3.2 over baseline, if baseline is 0?
Katie, if I have this right, I think that the scenario 1 is 3 times as expensive as the, is that right?
Yes, that is accurate. And I think Hulang, like you're talking from operations and maintenance, that absolutely that is talked about and addressed and in the documentation. But I think for the purpose of this and in kind of that order of magnitude, and it's not to say that baseline, that there's no cost. We took that out of here. For baseline, they're still going to have to replace the same 1,034 vehicles to be exact for today. And there are facility needs that will be required as well. But we extracted that out to provide kind of that incremental, what is the actual difference in terms of if you were doing that transition, what would that, or order of magnitude cost differential?
Got it. Thank you. So do you know how much is the baseline cost?
Hugh Lang, this is Brian. Let me jump in, Katie. The actual numbers, Hugh Lang, are subject to some additional analysis and review internally at RTD. We intentionally have presented it at this level to give the audience just a general sense of the order of magnitude. And please just look at it in that context. These kinds of looks into the future, especially if you're looking at a vehicle fleet the size we have, the complications related to the size of our facilities, the existence of expansion opportunities and where we would do it. There are so many variables that we have concluded that it would be premature and put too much accuracy in the ability of these models right now to be any more specific in terms of dollar amounts. So you won't see that. We're going to do additional work internally with the consultant team. We may have some additional specificity later, but at this stage, we're just going to leave it at this level. And we'd like you all to see the general picture of what it could look like in terms of the differential between proceeding without moving purposefully and where we are right now. That's the limit that we're going to go into detail at this time.
Okay, thank you. Another quick question. Okay, you mentioned the FTA zero emission vehicle requirement. Is that a mandatory requirement or is that a volunteer requirement?
So the FTA put out, I think it was last December, a Dear Colleague letter about requiring zero emission vehicle transition plans to be a part of any applications for 5339. B, which is the bus and bus facilities, and C, which is the low or no. So this past spring, when applications were due in May, agencies had to, if they were applying for low or no, they had to include that ZEV transition plan as a part of that. So there's kind of 6 key points right now that are in that, and it's pretty high level, but it is definitely something that FTA is expecting, and CDOT is also going to use the same requirement for funding that they are allocating through their new transit enterprise.
It is actually part of the statute as well. This was part of the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which
Yeah.
sections of which were reauthorization of the federal program, and it is now a new requirement in the statute.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Blair. David.
It would be interesting to me to have some course level estimate of greenhouse gases. My personal sense of this, uninformed opinion as it is that our personal choices for replacement of our 3 million odd personal vehicles and our personal travel choices is likely to swing the greenhouse gas needle more than jumping heavily into electrification of RTD's fleet in the very near future. So I say slow and steady until we see fleet prices come down.
Yeah, you are absolutely right, David. And that's a great point. When we're talking about the region's desire and our goal to achieve some of those greenhouse gas emissions reductions, way more can be achieved at our personal level than can by just these 1,000 vehicles, bus vehicles.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Kent.
I'm making a brass assumption here, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but these magnitude of cost, they don't include receiving federal dollars to actually offset the difference between diesel and transit or the facilities as you have to convert them. Is this just a pure dollar amount?
This is pure dollar. And, I think it's typically, at least for vehicles, 80-20, I've even been hearing it might move to 90-10, as your percent split. So yes, you are absolutely correct in your assumption that this does not include any offset.
So to follow up then, if there was an offset provided at the federal level, that would change your, at least the initial cost would come down out of the agency.
Yeah, but yes. However, they're still getting the reduction probably now as well, right, with some of those federal.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there's not much of a marginal difference in the law. The law allows for 80-20 of diesel, and the new law is 90, sometimes 100%. Yes, it is a differential, but the cost differential between a battery electric bus and a diesel bus is still 20 to 30% higher. It's just not making up the difference. And that's just the bus itself. It's not the infrastructure as well.
Yeah, Cliff, if I could add on to that though too, that part of our problem with our infrastructure components is we have 40 to 50-year-old operating bases that really are not designed, for electrification. And there's a lot of things that really need to be different as we expand out on this. But, for example, like Elaine was asking a little earlier about cost. With the diesel fleet, I already have a fueling facility, but if I go to a fuel cell, then not only do I have to install a fuel cell fueling place, but my bases are already at capacity. So that means I have to reduce the number of buses that I can actually house there too. And there's also other things that I have to do. And a lot of people don't think about these things. For example, electric bus batteries are a few thousand pounds, they're on the roof. That means I have to install jibs, hoists, fall restraint systems, lifts that I don't have right now. So it's not just a matter of buying chargers. It's a matter of all kinds of things, upgrading exhaust and fire suppression systems. There's just so much stuff that really there's not adequate funding available for every transit system in the country to be able to make this conversion in any time in the near future, even with all the extra dollars that are out there.
And all these estimates would have to be refined in a proper rollout plan or implementation master plan.
And to add on, you're probably also looking at needing additional utilities ran into
Absolutely.
there to handle the power requirement.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's definitely all the discussions we're having. So.
Terrific. Thank you. Danny, I believe you are up next.
Sure. Hey, Danny O'Connor, City of Boulder. Just appreciate this discussion. So this is really helpful and insightful. I guess probably what the question I have is, so how I mean, with all of this kind of in consideration and just, you know, the costs and magnitude, how is this informing like the strategic directions kind of in the immediate to replace vehicles that have hit those useful life thresholds? If it's 12 years or older, we know that there's aging fleet kind of within the RTD, basically within the RTD fleet, and you know, you got 17 coming in, but what does this do for those other ones that are, you know, that there's a critical need to replace, and the direction you go with?
Fred, would you mind tackling that one?
Sure. So we don't have another major bus replacement really scheduled to 2025. So we have some time to do some refinement work. This is really something that's a very, I don't want to say rudimentary because it makes it minimize the work, but this is something that just kind of gives us something that's a springboard for the next step. I mean, realistically, we need to take all the work that WSP has done with all the blocks and then actually go through a charge management strategy to say, here's the, you know, exact number of vehicles. The other thing that's hard to predict though too, as we start looking at this too, is how is the technology going to evolve? There are denser batteries coming out that have greater range, but I think that Camden, Connecticut showed the volatility of some of those new denser batteries also. So I think we've got time to really start doing that. We have actually some over-the-road coaches that are scheduled in 2025. Then we really start doing major purchases again in 2026, 2027 range. So we have time to start putting together a more refined plan, but it isn't just the infrastructure, the vehicle purchases. We have to do all the infrastructure planning too for all of this. And that's a significant amount of work also. I'm not just buying a bus, I'm buying a whole system, and I have to make it work within the boundaries of what we have right now and the funding that we have. So there's still a lot of work to do though on this, Danny.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that helps.
Terrific. Thanks so much. David.
Yeah, I just want to also comment on the statement that was made earlier that RTD owns some facilities and then the subcontractors own other facilities. That's a distinction that needs a lot of careful discussion. I guess to use a metaphor, if you were a renter, you wouldn't pay to build an addition on your apartment on somebody else's property, and then when you're done being a renter there, you don't have the use of that. So it's a very, very important sort of long-term strategic decision that has to be made about how much RTD would invest electrification types of technologies into properties that they don't own, and how they get the value of those assets back at the end of the asset life.
Well said. Yes.
Well, we have one more section to go through to talk about partnerships, but I wanted to make sure I captured any other comments, any other thoughts.
Julie, I just wanted to follow up.
Please.
Fred can explain this much better than me, but the more you understand about the complexities related to converting from clean diesel to battery electric or some other fuel, the more you realize that this is a complicated problem. It has challenges and opportunities. And as Katie mentioned, we have quite a bit of experience at RTD. With the 36 vehicles that have been out there for quite some time and the investigations that we're doing with the 17, I think if stakeholders in the audience would like additional depth, Fred has a really in detail presentation, because when you get into the Reimagine RTD, let me back up. It's intended to look at 2050. And if you think about the size of our fleet and the size of our district, the climate, not just the distances, but we have issues related to elevation. If you look at all of these things together and the costs and the facilities and the electricity and the fuels and what could change with technology, what we're trying to give as part of Reimagine RTD is a good setting of where we are, what we know, and make everybody aware that we understand the aspirations in this area and are very much wanting to support those aspirations. But we also want people to know that we're taking a fiscally responsible, careful look at how this will actually play out. We'll keep everybody, of course, abreast. Fred and his team are extremely good at the due diligence on this, but this is the classic example of the more you get into a problem, the more you realize how complicated it really is. It's not that it's so complicated it's insurmountable, but it's very difficult to boil it down and reimagine RTD into a very simple, compact explanation. But we hope that we've given you enough to give you a sense of the challenges and opportunities ahead. And Fred, would you like to add anything else to kind of frame that for us?
This is one that I could talk about for about 3 days, but I will tell you, first off, I want to step back and say, the chart that you're looking right now is looking at scenarios that are all or nothing. More than likely, as we go through a fleet transition plan, it will be a mix of technologies until we get to where we want to be. How long that will take and what that's going to look like, that'll be part of our next steps on planning of all this. But Brian is right. I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, like on-route charging. Right now, there is a significant cost for charging during peak period times. We were actually an intervener to actually get a specialized electric vehicle rate for charging during off peaks. So it's not just a matter of, going out and installing chargers out there on the streets. Now I've got to go back and work with the PUC again, try to get us a specialized rate for demand charging. It's mind boggling. I've been working on the current the 17 buses we have right now. I've been working on this 3 years and we're still, a ways out from delivery. I have a team of 30 people that are working on this. We meet 2-3 times a month to talk about all these things. Agreements with Excel. We've been working on the agreements with Excel for 10 months now, trying to get through all that. So, there's all these different moving parts and pieces, but I think Brian is right. If you really want to hear a little bit more about this, I did a board workshop that I believe is online back in July. You should be able to go online and watch it. I think it's very interesting. I will be fair though, and I did say this to the board too, our mall experience is going to be different than the new 17 buses that we have coming in. The mall is a completely different operating environment. It was great to learn lessons about the technology, what to do when you're bringing it in, how to set it up, how to utilize it, but it's not necessarily going to dictate what our experience is going to be like when we put it out in operation out on a regular local route itself. So that's the next step, and that's going to be really interesting to see what our next lessons learn as we move into that phase.
Thank you, Fred.
Perfect. All right. Well, with that, we've got to take use of our time here. We've got one more section to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about that partnership program. Who's going to lead this, Holly?
Kate, if you're out there, we are ready for some dialogue around this. Kate Sargent joins us from Sam Schwartz, and they've been working and attending these meetings. We put together a partnership program based on all the conversations we've had with you, largely following, we tried to bolster what RTD already has in place for their partnership program, and kind of followed what grant programs look like. And then the Sam Schwartz team really dug in and looked at what peer agencies are doing and best practices, and really put some of the details around this program for RTD's consideration. So they're going to step us through that today.
Okay, great. Thanks for that intro, Holly. So just diving in to build on what Holly introduced here, we wanted to start by outlining the current partnership program and what we're building on top of. So there are currently 3 types of partnerships that RTD has. So the first is a cost sharing partnership where RTD provides funds to local organizations and municipalities to support specific services. Secondly, there are innovative mobility pilots where RTD operates service initiated by a partner agency through a grant program. And the point of this is to test viability of a new service or in a new or emerging market. And then the third type is third-party operations where RTD supports service operated by others through an integrated trip planning and payment, through technical advisory services or compliance support of one type or another. So with that, we can go to the next slide, and we have a list of current partnerships. It goes to a following slide as well. But the majority of these are cost-sharing partnerships, and where RTD is the funder and either manages or operates the service as well. And if we go to the next page, there are currently 3 innovative mobility pilot programs as well, and 2 third-party operations partnerships. So we can keep going throughout the presentation, but happy to hear any questions as we go or take a pause for discussion at the end as well. So the existing partnerships policy is built on a transit service cost sharing policy that dates from 1994. And it provides general guidance on financial feasibility, vehicle availability, local community support and performance that defines how RTD would enter into a cost sharing relationship. And then how we want to build on this is that we're proposing to elaborate on the existing policy and give a guide for an administrative approach to partnerships that allows RTD to advance our partnerships in a way that's clear and straightforward. So in addition to the existing policy we talked about, RTD is engaging in additional types of partnerships. And so we want to be able to provide a framework that provides some guidance on how the organization can go about that in a way that's organized and fair and transparent with partners. As part of this, we want to, we've proposed, and then this was, I heard discussion of this earlier, a proposed annual budget allocation dedicated to partnerships. And so the way the partnership program is proposed to be structured, it supports or it builds on the proposition that RTD is acting as a mobility integrator in the region. And another approach here is to allocate scarce monetary and human resources, building on the financial picture that's been discussed as part of this project. And then provide some clear evaluation criteria so that RTD can continue to evaluate how well partnerships are performing against their values and against performance criteria over time. Okay, next slide, please. So in terms of program goals, of course, we want to address regional and local travel needs. Another goal is to increase ridership on RTC services and ridership across the region. Increase funding associated with transit in the region, so to leverage existing RTD funds to increase transit, to have access to additional sources of funding, such as from private entities, nonprofits, and local governments that can help augment funding for services in the district. And to ensure that the implementation and continuation of partnerships is based on clear and measurable criteria. Next, please. So with all that background, we can dive into the proposed program staffing and structure. So in our peer agency interviews that Holly referenced, such as with King County Metro in Seattle, TransLink in Vancouver, LA Metro, having a dedicated position as the partnerships lead was considered to be a best practice. And so we're proposing that that RTD have a partnerships lead within contracted services, who manages the annual application process, develops the MOUs with partners, and serves as the program's front door. So if someone wants to pursue a partnership with RTD, they know who to talk to, they know who's going to help guide them through the different parts of the organization that may be involved in evaluating and executing services. And this person will need support, of course, because different areas of the organization will be involved. So evaluation of applications may involve representatives from multiple departments who can make overall recommendations to the GM, CE, or CEO. And ongoing management and evaluation by the Service Development Division and Contracted Services as part of standard performance evaluations on an ongoing basis. And then there'll be other input and coordination needed depending on the partnership type and the specifics of the service being provided. So we're proposing not only sort of an initial evaluation period, but a periodic review and dedicated set aside for partnership matching with the board. So as discussed earlier, we're proposing 1 to 2% of the annual operating budget. And that could also be something that RTD builds towards over time, depending on what's feasible. And another best practice that we gleaned from our interviews is that that the agency should not only account for the cost of directly providing the service, but in whatever is considered to be the partner's match, to account for the full cost of the partnership program, including staff who plan and monitor the service. So any RTD resources that need to go into actually managing or executing partnerships should be accounted for in some way. We are also proposing to tie the funding match level. So what RTD's match would be, or portion of the budget to provide the service, would be tied to how well the service aligns with RTD's goals, to help ensure that partnerships are being funded that align with where RTD wants to go as an organization. And we'll get into a bit more of that detail on the following slides. And so through the budgeting process, the GM/CEO will advance the program recommendations to the board. So that's the basic structure of what we're proposing. And so on this slide, we show the guiding principles that are associated with Reimagine RTD, and a way that potential partnership services could be evaluated on a scale ranging from it fully supports that particular guiding principle to it does not support. And these metrics can be a bit more qualitative or a bit more quantitative, depending on what, as RTD develops the specific application process, what they think is a reasonable ask of a partner. So for example, if you look at sustainability, if it fully supports that guiding principle, it reduces greenhouse gas emissions and supports a transition to a low/no emission fleet. If it's a zero emission vehicle, maybe the second half of that is straightforward, but are we going to ask a partner to do like a full emissions analysis, or is that going to be a bit more qualitative is a question that can be decided as part of developing the specific application process. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, performance metrics and expectations for an annual evaluation. So the guiding principles could be reevaluated, could be assessed on an ongoing basis as well. If there is a significant change in the service that would potentially affect the RTD match, like if the service is sort of evolves over time in such a way that maybe the RTD match would change, that's possible. But what we are also proposing here is that there should be metrics developed for each partnership type and each travel market service category, formerly referred to as class of service, but in the SOP service category, and account for any unique aspects of the proposed service. And so some of these metrics include passengers per hour, per trip, subsidy per passenger, and on-time performance. And we also want to consider transit-dependent riders. And so there's a graphic here to the right that just shows the different service categories and how they're defined. We're also proposing that decisions on appropriate partnership services and performance metrics should also be tied to land use and residential and job density. So RTD has some minimum service levels for outside the Denver CBD. So for example, shown down here in the blue box, local service and park and ride service is determined to be appropriate where there are more than 12 residents and employers per acre. And so in determining whether a partnership type is appropriate, RTD can reference the service type and whether it's appropriate for the land use and employment density in that area. And there are, from peer agencies such as for example, TransLink, there are some additional categories, service categories that RTD may want to consider as well in terms of density guidelines. So for different service types, like, their rapid service or their all-day frequent service, they have different guidelines for context where that would be appropriate. So that's a possible reference point as well. And that's the chart over there to the right. Okay, so in terms of determining whether to continue with partnerships, the annual evaluations can guide determination of whether it's appropriate to continue with a partnership over time. However, we understand that this needs some flexibility as well. And so we want to make sure that the program allows partnerships to evolve based on the evaluation process and outcomes, and that RTD match might change based on how that program evolves over time and how well it aligns with the guiding principles. But the outcomes of these evaluations shouldn't be a surprise. So there should be a dialogue in which partners are notified when they're not meeting performance expectations and allow at least a year for improvement on metrics. So along those lines, the application process could be used as a screening mechanism to help avoid discontinuation and provide a plan for improvement over time. Another best practice from King County Metro in particular was to include language in contracts about a gradual step down of service, and that the partner has to provide a certain amount of funding or ensure that they have a certain amount of funding to step down the service and not just discontinue it, on a certain day, but be able to provide decreasing service over some period of time to allow riders to adjust. And then is there a next slide? And then it's just discussion and questions. So yeah, that is where we've landed with our recommendations, and would love to hear any questions or feedback.
Yeah, so I know we've talked about a few pieces of this in past meetings, but I think this is the most comprehensive sort of structure, and Kate and her team actually have a whole set of, and the RTD team have taken this work and moved it forward for the whole process and what the applications will look like. But I think from an overarching perspective, is this helping put some framework to and add some more clarity to what the partnership program would look like moving forward? And does this help? Was something that's been asked for a lot. So,
so I think, well, Brian just disappeared. So Deborah, I'll go straight to you.
Well, hey, Julie, yeah, I just want to make a quick introductory comment.
Great.
This is intended to get the discussion going on the partnership program with stakeholders who are going to be directly part of the program. We anticipate as Reimagine RTD moves forward into October on a parallel track, we are going to be reaching out to stakeholders in a more broadly specific request for their comments. We're still refining and working on some of the language and proposals that are still under consideration internally at RTD. We anticipate having that ready sometime in September. And then what we will be doing is reaching out, like I said, to stakeholders to provide additional input, additional thoughts on how this is structured, so that philosophically, this is a program that's intended to involve our stakeholders in a more purposeful way, because it is at what we call in Reimagine RTD SOP. Remember, we have the 4 different levels. This is a community level where clearly there's more room for the dialogue to go back and forth. So extending that philosophy, we do want stakeholders to have an opportunity to look at where we're headed and give us their feedback even before we bring something forward to the leadership team and the general manager at RTD for their endorsement of the proposal. The other thing I'll mention is that moving forward into October and November, we will be asking the board for funding, which currently is not available yet, but we're anticipating that the board will allocate funding. We don't know what the amount is going to be. There's a discussion in here of 1%, 2%. That's certainly not a promise. It's an idea. So at any rate, I just wanted to make sure that I want the people participating today and tomorrow to know that there will be additional specific outreach to stakeholders in this particular area of what RTD is working on. We're very happy that we've been able to take advantage of the consultant team to give us insights on how to move forward. But we believe this is a distinct and important part of where RTD is headed that reflects a lot of initiatives that we've had underway for some time. And so we do want to give the opportunity for an enhanced level of engagement and participation before we make decisions on how this will be adopted and rolled out. So I hope that makes sense.
Terrific. Thank you, Brian, for jumping in on that. I appreciate that clarity. Now we can go to Deborah.
Okay, so I'm very impressed with the amount of detail that was included in this. So thank you, Kate, and your team for doing that. I feel like it does a great job of protecting RTD. I'm sorry, I can't find a better word right now, but it's sort of like your own attorney wrote the contract, so it's going to favor the district. That's not necessarily a bad thing. RTD has to be a steward of public dollars. The board has to be accountable for decisions they make along with the staff. So I don't want to totally diss it, but what I do want to say is when we talk about local partnerships, it's not just that there was a local bus route discontinued and now the local agency is going to pick it up. It's a question of the local agency has a deep understanding of their community and sees a need that they wish to partner on to fulfill. And it concerns me if that service, which may take some time or be a little outside the box, doesn't meet RTD's service standards, which I don't think Kate used those words, but that's what I heard in terms of measuring the productivity of service. I would be hesitant to go down that path, bringing my agency. So good work, good job in setting up RTD up for success. I'm not sure it sets the partnerships up as well for success. That's it.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know if RTD or Holly want to comment on that in the context of the broader study. The part that we were, and I don't know if this is helpful, but the part that we were trying to emphasize in terms of evaluating how much funding a partnership was eligible for was how well it met the guiding principles in particular. So the service guidelines should be a reference point, whether something is like the appropriate kind of service for the context. But also just wanted to emphasize, like, in terms of our recommendation for feedback, that that RTD prioritize their resources according to what they established their goals to be. But yeah, would love to hear if Holly or others from RTD have more to build on with that.
I think David was next, I believe.
I've got two comments, a lot of it coming from my experience at CDOT. So first is, I think FTA will continue to have boutique funding programs and all the stuff we talked about, electrification. So these local funds are a way for the region and for partnership funds to leverage external funds. That implies that some of the money that flows through may be federal money. And so my second point is, I think RTD should strongly encourage, even though it's not to the advantage of individual communities, but I think RTD should strongly be encouraged to look at treating us all as federal subrecipients. Coming from CDOT, my experience was, and we had 60 subrecipients on an annual basis there. Everybody wanted to come in and get state funds and not have federal rules. And take the money and run. And, give me 10% of the rules that FTA has, but in practice, what CDOT found was that about 75 or 80% of the rules overlapped with federal rules, just by needing to make sure that the money is not wasted or frittered away. And so once you get to about a 75 or 80% overlap with federal rules, it's maybe just easier to treat everybody as a federal subrecipient.
So
Food for thought.
David, help me understand what exactly does that look like when that occurs?
I mean, if RTD doesn't do that, then it has to have 2 sets of contracts for everything.
Right.
Some
Right.
people will get a federal contract because there's federal dollars flowing through. Some people will get a contract
Right.
that has 75% of the federal rules. And so it becomes more complex on the internal RTD side to manage all this stuff.
Right. Right. Okay.
And I think safety standards, drug testing, stuff like that, RTD is going to want to carry that through anyway.
Yeah.
You're
Right.
not going to want operators out there, maybe with some very rare exceptions, you're not going to want people starting up services where they don't have drug tested drivers.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. Let's see. I'm not sure who was next, but I think Kent.
I believe it was Kent was next.
Thank you. Appreciate you putting together this proposed outline. One of the things I would suggest as you look at this is that you look at annual evaluations, and we have a 3-year contract. First of all, it would have to be written into a contract, usually, or 3 or 4 year contract. But second of all, if it's a startup service, 1 year's probably not enough time. You probably need to look at a 2-year time frame by the time you get the service up and running and people really start using it. So I think as part of that evaluation, at least if it's a startup service or an expansion of service into a new area, I think you need to look at least 2 years before you could really do a good evaluation.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good insight. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll make a note of that. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Ken. Hugh Lang, I believe you were next.
Yeah, thank you. I was just want to circling back as well. I was asking about the SOP again. When we're, similar as what Deborah was talking about, her concern is what is the base? If the SOP is the base, if the locals wants to provide additional enhanced service or enhancement to the existing service, then we partner with RTD to provide service versus a local service get cut and eliminated, then we come back and contribute to bring that back. So I'm wondering if there's a base can be set, and then the partnership is really to come in to make the enhancement or the additional improvements.
All right. I mean, we can certainly float that past RTD. I would suggest, this might be counter to the nimbleness you're talking about, but as you are aware, RTD needs to respond to the funding that's in hand and the workforce that's available. So it might be challenging to suggest that there's a set base that can't be deviated from, when in fact we can see that we have had to make deviations from it, over the last couple of years. But we can certainly speak to that and see if that makes sense for them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Hugh Lang. Danny, you were next.
Yeah, no, thank you. Really appreciate all kind of just the thought and the partnership program and how that's working through and being put together. I think one comment, and maybe it's something that can be reflected or baked in, is as we've had partnership discussions and everything from HOP and other potential services with RTD, and they've always been really good. But anything where the RTD staff can provide some additional technical assistance, I'm just thinking about just different municipalities or others who are coming forward. A lot of this transit, kind of the ins and outs of operations and costs and what it takes to put together a really good service concept and plan and getting it procured. Anything that really kind of the RTD expertise can help just to ensure that these are success, just with that partnership and staff, I think would be really welcome. Just thinking about how other places are staffed, what they have, and then, back with what, really some of the, expertise and professional programs that RTD already has,
Yeah,
locked and loaded. So
Danny, I could not agree with that more. Being able to utilize that expertise and make sure that the other local agencies have access to that. I think that's so important. I know, Kate, we have talked about that in the partnership program. I know there's the partnership, the full slide deck, just so you all know, was attached for the partnership program. And some of the appendices and the peer review, some of the peer review information, what I believe was attached to your meeting appointment. So look in there because there's some more information. But Kate, I kind of can't remember the details. Right? We talked about the need to provide technical services and support, but I kind of don't remember the details of where that landed. Can you help with that?
Yeah, we did talk about the partnerships lead being somebody who could work with applicants to even help to improve the proposal that they're doing. And to say, like, you're proposing that it's, operates like this, but we found that it's more successful if you do Y. So to help that the benefit of having a point person is that they can help to improve the applications, but also in the annual evaluation process, we would recommend that that RTD work with the partner to not just say, like, well, things are falling down here, but to say, like, let's put together a plan that's going to get things to where we think it would be successful. So absolutely. So maybe we need to make sure that's explicit.
Yeah, maybe we can let's go review that language and make sure that that's clear in there, because I do think that's a really important, and it's something that we've been hearing requested elsewhere as well. So I think that would be great.
Terrific. I was going to go back to Hugh Lang, but we did have a comment in the chat too from Mike Hughes, and this is something I think he raised last time we were together, this concept of if it's truly a partnership, then you need to be more equals. You don't, each partner does their internal work. They don't put each other through the ringer. You come as equals and evaluate the partnership. Our challenge with this is we're talking about a set, amount of resources that have to be allocated across a very large region. So definitely hear your thoughts on that, Mike, but this is a really challenging situation because at some point somebody's going to have to make the decisions in terms of service coverage and things.
Not a marriage.
It's not a marriage. Yeah.
No, it's more a beauty contest where RTD is acting as the judge to decide who's prettiest. And if you really want a partnership, that's not how it should. That's not what you want.
Yeah.
Well, and I think with resources and expertise, and you join together as equals.
Yes, and
it's not
I
an
would
RTD
suggest
procurement process that should dominate this. It would be no different than Denver saying we want Denver's procurement to call the shot, and then we're going to test whether RTD is good enough here. And then you've switched who's walking across the stage and who's acting as judge. That's not how a partnership works. And if you want to call this something else,
well, we can. That's what I'm going to open it up to. I'd be happy to call it something else. I will say that the recommendation from the consultant team is that if RTD does need to remain in the driver's seat when they are allocating resources that come to them from their constituents. So we do feel that RTD does need to have some, this is not we have not structured it as a free-for-all.
But the partner's doing the same thing. Denver would be allocating resources that come from the citizens of Denver.
Yes, that is what they do. Yeah.
Right. So there's no reason why RTD gets to be the dominant partner in these. If you mean partnership, then you should mean it.
Then let's, I'd love to hear in the chat other names for it. If we have issues with partnership, I'd be fine with that.
Maybe the other thing I'd add too is that I think the goal of such a program is to identify what are the best ideas for service that's not being provided or that is not part of the network already. And that there should be some kind of process for evaluating what are the services that are best meet RTD's goals, what are the services, what are the good ideas, new ideas out there, and that RTD staff, like we were just talking about, can work with the applicant to even improve those ideas further. So, it can be a bit of a two-way street too.
Yeah, except that this isn't described as a two-way street. So let's imagine that RTD does that evaluation and you say BRT on Colorado Boulevard is a very high priority given origins and destinations, and we want to do that. There isn't any reason why RTD can't go to Denver and say, let's do this as equals. So Denver shouldn't have to go through an RTD process to become a partner any more than RTD should have to go through a Denver process to become a partner for them.
That is, that under that scenario, that would not necessarily require going through the partnership program. Because that's like, in that particular case, that's a project that RTD already has flagged as something that is within their hopper. So that would be a good example where you're not necessarily going through this particular process.
Yeah, David Kretzinger in the chat threw in, he's understanding Mike's challenge with this, and David, I can let you speak to this as well, but you're also talking about who's ultimately responsible for what happens with the, say, $8 million, roughly, because if you have 50 municipalities in the region, he's done the math for us, like it means everybody gets 150K if you spread it around like peanut butter, or RTD has to make hard decisions about which projects actually have more value. So, if we were unlimited resources, unlimited partnering resources, I think we'd be in a different discussion. But at the end of the day, somebody's ultimately got to make the call on how to spend those dollars in a way that best meets regional needs. So I think that's our continuing challenge. And then Deborah threw out an alternative name, local grant making program.
Right, which actually in fairness, we started with like a grant backbone. So, that is, I think that's exactly right, Deborah, that we started with that as a backbone and from the process perspective. So maybe that would make more sense.
I just want to do a quick time check. We've got about 6 minutes here. So we'll do Kent and David's questions. And then I think we got to hop down to one slide we have for next steps. So Kent.
Yeah, thank you. One of the other things I would suggest you put on there, you have annual evaluations or longer, as we discussed. I think that the locals need to have monthly input, either a monthly meeting, but at least monthly data coming to them that they're being evaluated on whether to continue the program. Because if we don't have that data, then once a year isn't enough, or once a quarter isn't enough. I think we have to have that monthly, because the locals might be able to do some adjustments or advertisement or marketing, et cetera, to try to improve that status. That way they can keep their electeds informed. Otherwise, it's not be a surprise to somebody down the road even if it's an annual evaluation.
Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah, you don't want to operate a service for a year and then figure out you should have been doing something different all along. So yeah. Great
Thank you. David?
I'm glad for both Brian Welch's and Mike Hughes's comments. I think this will need more discussion over time. And I really want to listen to Mike, because if we turn this $8 million just into another grant program, then all of us as cities and counties are we're going to go to RTD for $150,000 and CDOT for $150 and Dr. Cog for $150. And then maybe we might have enough money for a route. It just becomes a lot of hoops jump through to get one service stood up. So I think that's what I'm hearing in Mike's comment is like, be very careful about what we're intending and trying to do with this and structure it accordingly.
Great point. Thank you.
Yeah, Holly, it's Fred. Can I say something about all this too? So, when you start talking about partnership programs like this isn't just unfeathered money either, or untethered money, I should say. Depending on the source of the funding, there are federal terms and conditions that go with the dollar amounts. You also have to, though, look at things like Title VI implications. You can't go out and violate federal law when you're engaged in these. So it's important to have a structure around all of this. And I think it's important to have a structure like this because in the past, there was no real backbone for how decisions were made on how these programs got funded. you're not talking about just now saying, well, we're going to give it to whoever we like. There's criteria that they're putting forth to actually evaluate these particular programs. But you're right, there's not unlimited funding here. So we do have to have some type of criteria. We do lots of partnerships though with lots of people. I mean, Danny can talk about the partnerships with HOP that we've been working through those partnerships for years. You know, they're very successful partnerships, but there's other things that we haven't really had good criteria for in the past either. You know, at what point do you say that, you know, this program's been going on 5, 6, 7 years and there's no ridership on it? It's costing you a lot of money and there's no benefit to it. So what's the criteria for removing that? So I get the fact that this should be a partnership, but at the same time, there has to be a basic program and framework around all of this so that it's not just a political decision on who gets what money. And I think that that's where work like this is really, really important, to make sure that everybody is on level footing. They have equal chances at getting some of this. And then when we do get to a point though, we're working on partnerships. I mean, Danny can talk about when we were going through the economic downturn, we didn't just cut off funding to the HOP and to other areas. We worked through other alternative funding, you know, to try and make sure that we helped our partners at a time when there was not a demand for service out there. So I hear what they're saying about partnerships too, you know, and we try to be good partners and good stewards when we do enter into these agreements, but we do have to have framework for all of this.
Great, terrific. Thank you,
Yeah,
Fred.
yeah, and I know this maybe adds like a, I don't know, an unresolved element here at the end, but part of the thinking in calling it a partnership program is that it's not necessarily just giving away money. It's like maybe RTD is operating the service, maybe it's RTD's vehicles, maybe, you know, that there's some mix of the partner doing things and RTD doing things. So any whatever we want to call that.
Terrific. Well, thank you. Just to jump in here, I apologize. We're down to like one last minute. Holly, do you want to take us through this last? If we only have one more slide.
Yes, so appreciate everybody's input. It's been really, really tremendous and helped shape, you know, what we're coming back to RTD with, and still some shaping to be had as we're hearing here. So schedule and next steps, September 6th. We would like any comments that you have on that executive summary back from you, if at all possible. And if you have comments included in that on the partnership program or the battery electric bus that was presented today, we'll send out that full slide deck when we get done here. But you should already have the executive summary, and that's really the one that I'm most concerned about right now. Then October 11th, mobility plan for the future will go to the RTD Finance and Planning Committee. October 25th, it goes to the board for their consideration. So we'd like to make sure that we have this really shored up and have your comments addressed to the best of our ability, and that we're, you know, our goal here is to really reflect what we've heard from you for the past several years. And what we would like in an ideal world is that you feel like you agree with what's in there, agree where RTD is headed, and can really be an ambassador for moving forward and moving RTD forward down this path. And you know, realizing that there's obviously a lot of different opinions that we're trying to bring together under this umbrella, but I think we can all agree that RTD is going to need the support of all of its local partners to continue to move forward in a productive manner. So it's going to be pretty important that we get there, and that we hopefully can convey a message out of the mobility plan for the future that you can all get behind. So do send along comments, and don't worry if they are you know, controversial. We're happy to have them and would like to work them out now so we can get RTD pointed in the right direction. I think that's all we have. I just want a big shout out, and Brian, if you have a few words just to say thank you all so much for participating with us for these last several years, and your input has been tremendously helpful in guiding the project. So
Absolutely. Brian and Bill had to step out at 4:30, so we just
Okay.
lost them. But Brian did
All right.
specifically want to thank you guys again. I mean, we know this was a long program, with a lot of technical information. You guys have been fantastic supporting it. I don't know what Holly and I are going to do now. We're going to really miss you guys, so we're going to have to hopefully show up again, in some other form. So
Keep in touch.
Keep in touch. Give us your comments. We'd love to keep giving your feedback on this. So thank you so much for your time, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much, y'all.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.